what this is really about. Is this because Joe Biden believes in the death penalty, or is this some kind of a shiny object to distract people from other pardons? Even voters who previously backed Democrats cast the party as weak and overly focused on diversity and elites. You're kidding. When asked to compare the Democratic Party to an animal, they compared it to an ostrich because they've got their heads in the sand, are absolutely committed to their own ideas, even when they're failing. Biden commuting a bunch of people on death row, and some of them are pretty heinous. Well, all of them are pretty heinous, but 3 of them are going to stay on death row because apparently they're much more heinous, and Joe Biden's death penalty policy really doesn't make any logical sense with any consistency. You can see he published this today saying, I am now going to commute federal death row inmates, and there are some pretty serious folks on this list. NY posted a background on this. They say, pretty stunning here. Couple points on that. Stunning Joe Biden's doing anything based on what we've seen of him recently. And we are also asking what this is really about. Is this because Joe Biden believes in the death penalty, or is this some kind of a shiny object to distract people from other pardons? Let's take a look. They say 3 notorious fiends will stay on death row, but 37 are coming off. And some of the people are responsible for very bad things. Among those getting this holiday cheer, Thomas Sanders, 2010 kidnapped, shot Lexus Roberts, 4 times, cut her throat in Louisiana. No death penalty for him. We've got another one, Anthony Battle, murdered an Atlanta prison guard with a hammer. Life sentence for eliminating his wife, who was a U.S. Marine at the time, 1987. This person, Jorge Avaliva Torres, 2 girls, brutal deaths and terrible things, 8 and 9 at the time, who had been riding their bicycles, these young girls, in a neighborhood before they got murdered by this psychopath demon. 4 years later, strangled naval officer, someone else in her barracks. So you can see, rest in peace to these people who were taken from us way too early. And what we'll notice is Joe Biden is commuting their sentences. So here is what he says. I've dedicated my career to reducing violent crime and ensuring a fair and effective justice system, while he let in 15 to 20 million people, a significant portion of whom were criminals, a significant portion of whom were murdering innocent people in the United States. And now we're learning, lighting people on fire in New York City subways. But he says, today, I'm commuting the sentences of 37 of the 40 individuals on federal death row to life sentences without the possibility of parole. Now, these commutations are consistent with the moratorium my administration has imposed on federal executions in cases other than terrorism and hate-motivated mass murder. He says, make no mistake, I condemn these murderers, grieve for the victims of their despicable acts. And you also have to think about the finality of these things. The people who were the victims of these crimes, they've already been promised those executions. Okay, that's already been something that was given to them. And they ache for all the families who've suffered imaginal and irreparable loss. Well, they're just getting some salt poured in there. Now, but guided by my conscience and my experience as a public defender, my chairman of the Senate Judiciary Committee, and now president, I'm more convinced than ever that we must stop the use of the death penalty at the federal level. In good conscience, I cannot stand back and let a new administration resume executions that I halted. So Trump cannot come in here and do it. So 3 people will still be on the death penalty list, and those are going to be the Boston Marathon bomber and others. Let's see who they are. Boston Marathon bomber, Dokazar Tarnsov, who along with his brother, they killed 3 people in the Boston bombs. Robert Bowers, who killed 11 at a Pittsburgh synagogue, and Dylan Roof, who killed 9 Black Charleston churchgoers in 2015. So maybe it's a number of deaths, you get the death penalty, but if it's just a couple of kids who were raped and murdered, then they don't get the death penalty. So you see how you can get into very prickly positions there when we're talking about these things. But it feels to me like there's probably a lot more pain that was introduced into these cases than maybe was necessary. And if I was in Joe Biden's position and maybe somebody came to this request, maybe I would just sit there and look at the cases and say which ones look like they have a possibility, or some reasonable doubt to them, right? Because you're basically overturning the verdicts of your jurors who found these people guilty and sentenced them to death. So Joe Biden, I don't know if he did that at all. Did he give him a close look, or was this a blanket decision? And if the blanket decision was that someone who killed people at a synagogue or a church, they deserve death, but somebody who took out an 8 and 9-year-old doesn't deserve that, maybe he did make a distinction and he's in favor of some things, but not in favor of other things, which is just very Joe Biden. So let's take a look now at this article saying Democrats are in big trouble. Big problems are brewing for them. As you can see, Politico reporting, even voters who previously backed Democrats cast the party as weak and overly focused on diversity and elites. You're kidding. Democrats conducting post-mortems on their sweeping losses in 24 are now finding even more reason for alarm form, not just Kamala, not just Joe, in a trio of focus groups. Even voters who previously backed Democrats cast the party as weak and overly focused on diversity and the elites. That's according to research from a company called Navigator Research. When asked to compare the Democratic Party to an animal, they compared it to an ostrich because they've got their heads in the sand, are absolutely committed to their own ideas, even when they're failing. Yeah. Another likened them to koalas, who are complacent and lazy about getting a policy win that we really need. Democrats, another said, are not a friend of the working class anymore. Now, the focus group research shared first with Politico represents the latest troubling pulse check for a party still sorting through the wreckage of its November losses. Without a clear party leader, Democrats are walking into a second Trump presidency without any strategy. And so the Democrat Party as an entity like a koala or an ostrich, big trouble. You don't want to be part of the ostrich party, but that's who the Democrats are.